All that shortly, but first to our top focus at this hour. A group of armed men have reportedly kidnapped as many as 7 Indians in Afghanistan. Local Afghanistan officials have been quoted in the media as saying that they have been kidnapped in the northern Baghlan province there. Reports also say the 7 Indians work for a power company called KEC. They were reportedly kidnapped along with an Afghan colleague from Polekhumri in the northern Baghlan province there. More details are still awaited on this developing story. As of now, there are no concrete details on who is behind this kidnapping. Those are the initial details that we have at this point. 7 Indians are being kidnapped in Afghanistan's Baghlan region. Let's get in further details from my colleague Amitabh Revi, who's joining us on the broadcast for more on this. Amitabh, what more do we have at this point? We understand very little is known as the details are still trickling in.
So let me delineate what we have so far. These reports are being confirmed by local officials in this northern province in Baghlan. Polekhumri is the capital of Baghlan, and this incident apparently took place on the outskirts of Polekhumri, the capital, early this morning, possibly around 10 a.m. local time in an area called Khwaja Alwan. So the only official confirmation that we are getting is from the local police there. We've tried contacting and have been in touch with top government officials both in India, in Kabul, whether they're Indian and Afghan, and they haven't given us any details of this. The reports that are being put out by Afghan media quoting this Baghlan police provincial chief is that 6 to 7 Indians who are working in this power company have been kidnapped by an unidentified group of armed men. Now, we're not sure whether it's 6 or 7, and the Indian and the ministries both here and in Kabul are not confirming these details either. One possible driver or another worker, an Afghan, has also been kidnapped by this armed group. There are some reports that suggest that the Taliban could be behind this, but they haven't put out any kind of claim on the sites that they usually do in social media, whether it's on WhatsApp or on Telegram or on their official spokesperson who usually emails the journalists. So it's unclear who, if anyone, has been behind this. Just a little bit more information that we have about this company. Apparently, these 6 or 7 Indians belong to a company called KEC, which has been involved in power projects in Afghanistan, and they are apparently either working in conjunction or for another Afghan company that's called the Afghanistan Breshna Sharkat, which is an Afghan power company in the area. And we do believe, we know from official records with KEC that they did get a power project from Chimtala to Kabul in the year 2013. And that was worth 117 crore rupees, and it was a 220 kilowatt power line. Now, we're not sure whether these engineers, as we suspect them to be or are being reported, are part of that very contract that they got in 2013. But yes, local Afghan reports which are quoting local police officials. So we don't have confirmation from the Indian or the Afghan side at top levels as yet, but they are suggesting that these 6 to 7 Indians, possibly all of them engineers working with KEC, have been kidnapped in the northern Afghan province of Baghlan.
All right, stay with me, Amitabh. As Amitabh was just telling us, let's just tell you a little bit more about the firm with which it is believed that these 6 to 7 Indians are associated. They are believed to be employees of a firm called KEC. It is an RPG Enterprises firm. In 2013, it is believed to have got an order valued at rupees 117 crores for a transmission line between Chintala and Kabul. Baghlan Provincial Council has, as of now, according to some reports, linked the incident to the Taliban, who have not yet given out any confirmation. As Amitabh was just pointing out, no confirmation as of now on who is behind this incident, but these are local reports that are telling us that as many as 6 to 7 Indians have been kidnapped in the northern Baghlan province. Let's just speak a little bit more about the area where this has occurred. Amitabh, what more do we know about incidents in the past taking place in the same region of northern Baghlan?
Well, there have been no incidents reported from northern Baghlan itself, but if you look at the history of Indians being kidnapped in Afghanistan, there have been several, and there have been several releases as well over the last few years, if not months. do remember there was a lady from Kolkata who was abducted in broad daylight in Kabul itself, in the capital city Kabul. And if I remember right, Judith D'Souza was kidnapped in June 2016. And soon after, with the Indian government apparently intervening, we don't know details of that, she was released. There was also a Catholic father from Kerala who had been abducted or kidnapped in Afghanistan, and he was released as well, Father Alexis Prem Kumar. He was kidnapped in June 2014 from the western part of Afghanistan, that's Herat, which borders Iran. And again, it seems the Indian government was responsible in his release. He was released in February 2015, and if you remember those pictures of Sushma Swaraj meeting both these Indians who were released later. So Baghlan, we are not certain whether there have been any instances of Indians being kidnapped in the past, but there have been several, 4 others were released, 2 construction workers who were kidnapped or released in 2003 as well. But if this is true, this information that we're getting that they were working on this power line, this 220 kilowatt power line from Chintala to Kabul, India has only been involved over the last decade or so in development projects, and Pole Kumri is one power project that Indian companies worked in. They have worked on roads as well, both in the south and near Kandahar. So Indian companies and Indian workers, Indian IT professionals are present in Afghanistan to project our soft footprint, if you can call it that, because India has been working with Afghanistan on development issues a lot. So if this information is true that these 6 or 7 Indians belong to KEC electricity or power generation company, then this would be in keeping in line with that. But again, we're not getting any confirmation of who exactly, which group was responsible for the kidnapping in Baghlan.
And like you mentioned earlier, Amitabh, no confirmation or no details as of now coming in from the Indian authorities either.
Well, we've been in touch both in New Delhi and in Kabul with top Indian diplomats. We've also been in touch with the Afghan diplomats in India and Kabul, and no official confirmation has come or no further details have come. So we're basing all this off the initial reports, which came out maybe around 2 hours back of this news, which is constantly picked up by the Afghan media. First, it wasn't really the mainstream media that picked it up, but then mainstream private media in Afghanistan, including Tolo News, picked up this, but they're all quoting only a local Baghlan provincial police chief. Nobody more senior than that has gone on record so far to confirm this news or to give us more details.
All right, stay with me, Amitabh. These are the initial details that are surfacing on this story that we are tracking. The big news that's coming in, as many as 6 to 7 Indians have been kidnapped in Afghanistan. What we also know at this point is that these employees are believed to be employees, these engineers are believed to be employees of a firm called KEC. We do know that this kidnapping, according to the local reports, has occurred in the northern Baghlan province. These reports also suggesting that there are no details or any confirmations as of now on who is responsible for this kidnapping. What we also know is that these engineers were reportedly kidnapped along with an Afghan colleague from Pole Kumri, to be specific, in the northern Baghlan province of Afghanistan. As Amitabh and I was just pointing out, several instances in the past of Indians being kidnapped in Afghanistan. As of now, no details or confirmation that's come in from the Indian authorities. WION has been in touch with top diplomats at both ends in India and Afghanistan as well, but no official confirmation coming in. These are all local reports pointing towards how a group of armed men have reportedly kidnapped as many as 6 to 7 Indians in Afghanistan. These are local officials who have been quoted in the media as saying that these engineers have been kidnapped in the northern Baghlan province. Amitabh also speaking a little bit more about the earlier instances as recently as last year as well that we were just talking about.
Correct. There have been at least 2 high-profile incidents over the last 3 years where Indians have been released after they were kidnapped. Now, again, understandably, both the individuals themselves, both the governments, both the Indian and the Afghan governments, or whoever else was involved in negotiation of any kind to get their release, has not spoken in detail about what really happened. That is understandable, of course, both for those individuals and for the governments involved. But as you're pointing out, two other high-profile cases where Indians have been released was a lady from Kolkata. She was working with an NGO, the Aga Khan Foundation in Kabul, and was kidnapped in June 2016, I believe, from the heart of Kabul in broad daylight. We again don't know who was responsible for that particular instance, but she was subsequently released. And you would remember pictures of Judith when she returned back and she met the top Indian leadership, including Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj. The other high-profile Indian who was kidnapped in Afghanistan was from the western province of Herat, which borders Iran. Now again, that usually doesn't see much activity of the Taliban or of late now the Islamic State in the Khorasan province, but there are armed groups of various kinds and hues present all across Afghanistan, so we are unsure whether this is for money or for any other reason.
I'll just come back to you, Amitabh. We also have Shadi Khan, journalist from Anadolu Agency in Afghanistan, joining us over the phone line. Good evening, Mr. Khan. Appreciate very much you're speaking with us here on WION. What more details do we have at this point of this incident of abduction of Indians?
Good afternoon. At the moment, we just have confirmation from the provincial officials in Baghlan. They are confirming that the engineers were on their way to visit a substation which is under construction, funded by the Asian Development Bank in Baghlan province. And on their way, a Taliban commander named Qari Shaheen, a group led by this commander, reportedly abducted these men and took them away to the an area that is called Grande Hori, which has a very significant and strong presence of the Taliban militants in that area. But as you just mentioned, officially the Taliban, the main group, the spokesman of the main group, they have not acknowledged it so far. But local officials claim it is the work of the Taliban militants, and they have named a specific commander, under command of which these 7 engineers have been abducted, but no official words from the Afghan government or the Indian embassy so far.
And the number of these Indians being 6 to 7, Mr. Khan, and they are believed to be working with an organization called KEC, is that correct?
That's correct. 7 Indian engineers working with the Afghanistan Electricity Supply Company, the Afghanistan Breshna Shirkat, on these projects funded by the Asian Development Bank in the Baghlan province, just a few hours drive from the capital Kabul.
Confirmation from an official is coming from a local provincial police chief. Nobody else, but either in Kabul, we've tried here in Delhi as well, no other confirmation of that. You were mentioning a local commander. Now, is that commander, according to the police chief, linked to the Taliban?
That's correct, sir. No confirmation from anybody in the Ministry of Interior in Kabul or the Indian Embassy. The event took place just 4 hours from now, so it's very fresh. They might be working on their lead to make sure who is responsible. The provincial authorities have named this guy Qari Shaheen, and he is believed to be an affiliate with the Taliban, the main Taliban faction. But as I said, the group itself, they have not claimed it so far. They usually, in the past, I don't remember any incident in which they have acknowledged kidnapping like this one, except for the 2 professors of the American University of Afghanistan who still remain in their custody, and they are demanding the release of their own commanders to release those 2 American professors, those 2 foreign professors. One is British and the other one is American, and the other one is Australian. But in this case, you don't expect claim of responsibility for the Taliban anytime soon.
Mr. Khan, we understand these are the initial details only so far that have emerged, but if you can elaborate for us, if any details have come in so far on the circumstances under which the abduction took place. We're also getting in reports suggesting that the incident took place in Polekhumri in northern Baghlan province, to be specific. Is that right?
That's correct. This incident took place in the Polekhumri city of the Baghlan province, which is the main and the biggest city in this province. Generally speaking, this province is not among the safest places in Afghanistan. There are a couple of districts where Taliban are, pretty much in command and control. And Puli city itself is surrounded by pockets where the Taliban has strong presence, particularly areas like Gande Hori, and there's another pocket to the other side of the Puli city. So, as I said, the Taliban have not taken responsibility, but the local officials, they are pretty sure that the Taliban has done it, at least a section of the Taliban, which is based in this province, they have done it, and the main group might not take responsibility for it for obvious reasons. But a few months ago, the Taliban did took responsibility for blowing up two main power transmission lines to Kabul. Afghanistan heavily depends on imported electricity from the Central Asian states, and those transmission lines, they pass through Baghlan province. They publicly took responsibility for targeting those transmission lines. And as we mentioned, these Indian engineers were working on electricity supply projects. So these two are pretty much linked.
Indeed, and these engineers are believed to be working with that firm KEC, which also had that project, was working on laying down that transmission line between Chimtala and Kabul as well.
That's correct. That's correct. They were working on a project funded by the Asian Development Bank worth some $50 million. And the project was aimed to supply electricity to the capital Kabul, as well as Khumri and the rest of Baghlan province as well.
Just to look back at incidents like this in Afghanistan now, if these 7 or more than that were working with this company, there would have been precautions, security precautions that would have been outlined that would have had to be taken if they're working in Afghanistan in general.
That's correct. Security is pretty much, security is very fragile. Foreigners, they usually avoid traveling to provinces, but Indians are actively involved in various development projects. The biggest power supply project, the biggest dam was the construction of the biggest dam completed in Afghanistan with the support of Indian aid in Herat province, and there are more power supply projects and construction projects where Indian engineers are working. According to some reports, more than 100 Indians are working in different provinces of Afghanistan. So yes, security they might have had security precautions and security convoys around them. But still, these incidents, as you rightly mentioned, there are other groups that operate even in the capital Kabul, targeting foreigners for extortion and other purposes. So perhaps they somehow managed to abduct these Indian engineers who were protected by the police guards, but they managed to do it.
Any details so far, Mr. Khan, on how long these Indians were in Afghanistan, how long they've been working with this firm?
No, unfortunately, we don't have much details. That's also part of the security precautions.
Sure.
These details are kept secret, nobody knows. But this project was supposed to be completed next year. So, and I don't know when this project was launched, but I can't say anything. The project was supposed to be completed next year.
Right, Shadi Khan, again, you were mentioning other projects that India has been involved in. You mentioned the biggest dam, the Salma Dam, which was renamed as the India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam. There have been other power projects, the Pule-Charki project that you were mentioning that brings in power to Kabul. Indian companies and workers have also worked on roads, including the Zaranj-Delaram road that links the Baghlan road to the Iran border. So India has been involved in a lot of projects in Afghanistan.
That's correct. That's true. India is busy developing cricket grounds in different provinces. Just a couple of weeks ago, a new cricket stadium was inaugurated in Kandahar province in the south. And before that, in the capital Kabul, a sort of hill park where the biggest flag of Afghanistan was installed. with the support of Indian government. So yeah, there are many projects where Indian engineers or maybe local engineers funded by the Indian government are working across Afghanistan.
Shahid Khan, senior journalist, joining us from Kabul. Appreciate very much you're sharing all of those details with us. Also joining us now at this point is Zabiullah Noori, an analyst from Kabul. Appreciate very much you're speaking with us here on WION. If you can elaborate for us the details that we have gathered so far on this incident of the 7 Indians being kidnapped in northern Baghlan province.
Hello?
Yes, Zabiullah Noori, who's joining us, thank you very much for speaking with us. If you can elaborate for us the details that have trickled in so far on this incident of 7 Indians being kidnapped.
The details is, first of all, that there were 6 Indians and 1 Afghan, according to trustworthy sources in the local government. There were 6 Indians and 1 Afghan national who were going to their work in Dandikhori area, and they were kidnapped in Baghlan area of Pulakhumri. One thing that it's worth noting is the fact that Dandikhori was handed to the Taliban as, in a sense, as a no-go zone by the government 2 years back. Back then, the tribal minister, Gulab Mangal, signed a peace deal with them, saying that it's a kind of like no-go zone for the Taliban, and then the Taliban agreed not to attack the people and the forces. A similar thing happens in Helmand in 2007. That failed, but then this deal was made by the government. So in a bigger picture, this is a failure of the Afghan government giving an area to the Taliban, and where they're now attacking the people, where they are kidnapping the people, and also these power lines. Every now and then they cut the power line supply to Kabul. So it's kind of like a cancer that the government intentionally built it there. And this is the problem, unfortunately, created by the government, and now they cannot handle it.
Right, you're saying that this is... All right, just hold that thought there. I'll just come back to you, Zabiullah Noori, who's getting us more perspectives on this developing story. Going back across to my colleague Amitabh Revi, who's joining us with more details on the firm KEC with which these engineers have been associated and working on that project of laying down that transmission line between Chimtala and Kabul. Over to you, Amitabh.
Right, KC has issued a statement and has issued a statement to WION saying that it has about over 60 employees all across Afghanistan. Now, just illustrating how difficult it is to get information, even from Kabul. Here we're talking about the northern province of Baghlan. That KEC's statement goes on to say that it has received no information from ground zero on any missing people. The KEC statement to WION also goes on to say that there's been no communication from either the governments of India or Afghanistan on that, and that KEC is trying to get more facts. The exact statement to WION is that more than 60 Indians working for KEC are working on different projects in Afghanistan. As of now, we have no reports of any of our employees missing. This is just what we're trying to illustrate. It's so difficult to get information. The company itself doesn't know. Both top officials in Kabul and in New Delhi are not responding with any more information. KEC going on to say we are trying to get more details from ground zero. We have not officially been communicated anything from the Afghanistan government or the Indian government as yet. So these reports are emanating only from a local provincial chief in Baghlan in North Afghanistan. KEC has no information on that. Top officials, diplomats in Kabul and in New Delhi have also not given us any information as yet.
Absolutely. That's the first statement that's coming in from KEC, the firm with which these 6 Indians, the engineers, have been working on a project that was assigned by the Asian Development Bank. KEC, in a statement to WION, talking about how very initial details that have surfaced so far, saying that we do not have reports of any of our employees missing, that more than 60 of those have been working on different projects. More than 60 Indians, to be specific, have been working for KEC on different projects across Afghanistan. As of now, KEC saying that they do not have any reports of any of their employees going missing, saying that they are trying to get in further details from ground zero, saying that KEC has not officially been communicated anything from Afghanistan government or from the Indian government. Going back across to Zebullah and Nuri, that's the statement that's coming in, Zebullah, from the firm KEC with which these engineers are working. Understandable that it's extremely difficult, like Amitabh was also pointing out, to get in any details at this point, also from a region like northern Baghlan, which is cut off as well. So it's understandable that the firm itself at this point has no details or information about their employees going missing.
Well, that's true. Again, I'm a bit skeptical of the fact that the KEC doesn't know. It might be, that the government trying to downplay. Unfortunately, the government is a bit biased when it comes to the Taliban. Whatever incident happened, if you notice in the recent months, they tried to downplay the Taliban offensive and the Taliban attacks, but give it a more name under the Daesh, the ISIS. This is the problem within the government, because the government wants to bring the Taliban to the peace negotiation table, so they try to downplay it as much as possible. Possibly, the Afghan intelligence might be in communications with the Taliban at this moment that we are talking, in order to get these people released under any circumstances that they can make a peace deal or some sort of agreement. So for that reason, they might have said to the KEC, it might be the best idea to say that so far nothing happened, we are going to release them in a matter of hours, or maybe possibly by the end of the day. That's the suspicion that the Afghan government might be doing that. And for that reason, they are saying the best idea would be that so far we have no official confirmation. This has happened in the past in other incidents. Remember, the Taliban abducted people in Ghazni, Kandahar, where they killed Tabassum, the 9-year-old girl, which caused serious and huge demonstration in Kabul 2 years back. So this is not something new for the Taliban. The Taliban does do these kind of things, but the fact, as I said, the government is a bit biased because of their policies in any way possible to the process to have a legitimacy in the government, and also same as they brought Gulbuddin Hikmat here. They want to bring this one. We are in the process of elections, so they want to bring and saying they get re-elected in the new year. These are all the policies behind that. But as I said, I'm really skeptical of the fact that the KEC does not know anything about this. It might be under the indirect pressure of the government or the feeds that the government has given them not to say that we have confirmed reports about this. This might be the scenario.
Right, and taking a cue from what you're saying, Zebullah, this is also coming at a time, it's also important to speak of the timing at which this incident is taking place in the backdrop of those negotiations that have been taking place between the Taliban and the Afghanistan government.
Yeah, that is true. This is something, and in order for the Taliban to show that they can't do anything, any part of Afghanistan, they try to do as many things as possible. And one more thing you need to remember, the Taliban is supported by the Pakistanis. And the fact that they take an Indian, this is an achievement for them to make happy their bosses.
Absolutely. Amitabh, as Zebullah was just pointing out, the statement that we've gotten from KEC, that's the reaction that's come in from the firm with which these engineers were working. In that statement to WION, saying that at this point they are not aware of any of their employees going missing. The skepticism with which Zebullah is viewing that statement also being a valid point that he's making?
Zebullah has his perspective, but you must remember here, if it's 6 or 7 or 8, there's a driver apparently included or an Afghan national also included. These are lives here. So the government and the company involved would be extremely circumspect till they get full information of if this has happened, who is responsible and what they want. And usually, as we've seen in the past, two high-profile releases of Indians kidnapped in Afghanistan, they've been done behind closed doors. They've been done in extreme secrecy, and even post that, you're talking 2 years post that, there are very little details available as to how and why these two Indians were released. So we have to understand the sensitivities that are involved here with lives at stake, that people would be circumspect. But yes, we would also expect both the governments involved and any other the company itself to give information to the media as and when is possible as well.
Absolutely. Stay with me, Amitabh and Zabullah Noori as well, analyst joining us from Kabul. That will remain our top focus in this edition here on WION. The 6 to 7 Indian engineers who've been kidnapped in northern Baghlan province in Afghanistan. Group of armed men have reportedly kidnapped 7 Indians in Afghanistan. Local Afghan officials have been quoted in the media as saying that the Indians have been kidnapped in the northern Baghlan province. Reports saying that the 7 Indians worked for the power company KEC. They were reportedly kidnapped along with an Afghan colleague from Pule in the northern Baghlan province. Further details are still trickling in. Reports also suggesting that these Indians were travelling from an area very close to the incident where it occurred in Pule. They were travelling from Tandekuri to Pule to be precise. This is also a no-go zone when it comes to the Taliban, and something that has been spoken in detail when we spoke to Zabullah Shuja, the Baghlan police spokesperson as well. Let's listen in to what the spokesperson had to say.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Shuja. Hi, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Salam alaikum.
Salam alaikum, साहब. साहब मैं इंडिया से बोल रहा हूँ. You understand Hindi?
अच्छा अच्छा हाँ बोलो.
सर अभी जो खबर आ रही है कि around 6 Indian staff have been abducted in Baghlan. Can you confirm me, sir, a bit details?
उर्दू में बात करो.
अच्छा सर, अभी खबर आ रही है कि एक इंडिया का कंपनी है KEC. वहाँ उस कंपनी का 6 इंडियन स्टाफ और एक अफगान का एम्प्लॉई कुछ अननोन आर्म पीपल्स ने उसको एब्डक्ट किया गया है. क्या आप इसके बारे में आपके पास कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन है?
अच्छा एक मिनट मैं इसके पूछूंगा.
जी.
भाई सुन रहा है?
जी जी. हाँ जी बताइए.
7 नफर इंडिया है, 1 नफर अफगान लोग है.
अच्छा.
तालिबान उसको पकड़ा.
तालिबानों ने पकड़ा?
हाँ.
All right, we will play out that entire conversation for you in just a short bit. Going back across to my colleague Amitabh Revi, who's been getting us the very latest. Amitabh, we have also gotten a statement from KEC, the firm with which these engineers were working, and very little is known at this point of the circumstances under which the kidnapping took place. But what does remain clear at this point is that top officials at both ends in India and Afghanistan are as of now remaining tight-lipped on the incident, understandably so.
We're still waiting for official confirmation from our top sources, both in Kabul and Delhi, diplomatic sources, government sources. The only report that is coming out is based on the Baghlan provincial police chief, who is being quoted there, and we apparently were speaking to the spokesperson of the police. They're outlining that 6, some reports say 7 Indian engineers and 1 Afghan employee, possibly a driver or a translator, have been picked up by an armed group. Now, there is speculation both among the local police there and hence from reporters in Kabul that the presence locally in Baghlan of one faction of the Afghan Taliban led by a certain commander could possibly be responsible for this. So, as of now, it's all ifs, buts, could be, no official confirmation. The Taliban usually, when they are responsible either for attacks or for kidnappings, has a mode of getting it public, whether it's through their so-called spokesperson, through emails to reporters, through various social media channels, including Twitter and Telegram, which are highly encrypted. There's been nothing so far from them. So is this just a faction? Is this for extortion for money? We have absolutely no idea. And KEC also officially claims that it has no idea. It's getting no reports from on the ground of its employees being kidnapped. It again claims that both the Afghan and the Indian government haven't got in touch with the company either.
Absolutely, Amitabh, and looking back at the early instances as well, as recent as 2 years ago, several precautions and security measures that are taken when it comes to Indians or those from another country that are working in Afghanistan. Help our viewers understand the kind of measures that are taken by each firm while employing these individuals in Afghanistan.
When you're talking about Western officials, Western diplomats, Western companies, especially in Kabul, they are under complete lockdown. They have absolutely no access to any normal events in Kabul. They are either behind big barricaded houses, offices. They have bunkers to keep them in. They move around in armored or armored motorcades with guards. Now that's as far as the West is concerned. India has been involved in many development projects in the past as well, and I remember a road company that was involved in the South, and South is where the Taliban is extremely prevalent. They were again under complete lockdown in their camp from dusk till dawn. It's only when they had to go out to help lay the road that they were escorted with a big convoy of Afghan National Police, Afghan security personnel who completely barricaded or tried to keep them safe from any possible attack. So we would presume that in this case too, there would have been security measures. They are not only guidelines, they are forced guidelines in cases like this, and whether those were breached is something that would have to come out in when questions are asked.
Absolutely, and Amitabh, that statement that's been released by KEC to WION, also as you pointed out, officially claiming that they have no knowledge or information of their employees going missing. But this is, of course, a sensitive incident.
Molly, if I can just come in there, because we're now getting the first official confirmation from the Indian side that there have been kidnappings in Afghanistan. The Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi has finally responded, saying that we are aware of the abduction of Indian nationals from Baghlan province in Afghanistan. We are in contact with Afghan authorities and further details are being ascertained. So this is the first official confirmation of what we were suspecting based on local reports. The Indian government has now finally admitted that there are Indians who have been kidnapped in Baghlan, though they're not giving us too much information for now, so we can take out all our information that says reports, because it's now the government of India acknowledging that Indian nationals have been kidnapped in the northern Afghan province of Baghlan. They're not saying how many. We believe 6 to 7.
Absolutely. So this was an update that came in just a short while back. This was only according to local reports, but now there is an official confirmation that's come in from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs. That's a statement that they have given out saying that the ministry is aware of the incident and that the ministry officials are in touch with the officials in Kabul to get in further details. So that's the first official confirmation that's come in. Let's get in further details from our correspondent Siddhant Sibal, who's joining us for more on that. Siddhant, what more has the Indian Ministry of External Affairs said?
Well, India has confirmed the abduction of Indian engineers in Afghanistan, in northern Afghanistan. India said that we are aware of the abduction of the Indian nationals from the province in Afghanistan, Baghlan province, and we are in contact with the Afghan authorities, and further details are being ascertained. The Indian government did not mention the number of people, number of Indians who have been confirmed, but the spokesperson of the police there in Baghlan has confirmed us the number, and of course he also confirmed us when the kidnapping happened. The kidnapping happened in the morning, and of course he said that in the morning 7 Indian engineers and 1 Afghan was arrested by militants in the area in the direction of Kumiri City Lake.
Right, Siddhant, this is the official confirmation that's come in from the Indian side. If you can elaborate for us what the ministry officials have stated of when these abductions took place and the circumstances under which they were kidnapped.
Well, the Indian ministry, of course, did not come out with a long statement, short statement, no mention of where they were kidnapped or how many are being kidnapped. We are in touch with the company also. It's an Indian company who sent the Indian engineers for a transmission line. The Indian company, of course, got an order way back in 2013. And, of course, the spokesperson of the police chief there confirmed that 7 Indian engineers and 1 Afghan were kidnapped by the people there. He hasn't mentioned that who kidnapped them, whether it was the Taliban or other militant group. But this is not new because Indians have been targeted earlier also. Remember that in 2008 there was this massive attack at the Indian embassy in Afghanistan, and 58 people were killed. The attack even killed Indian defense attaché, the political council, and 2 embassy officials, along with six Afghan police officers and many, of course, countless Afghan civilians. And, of course, there was a second attack in 2009 in which 17 people were killed. And, of course, at that time, the Haqqani network was blamed for the attack. Earlier this year, there was this attack in January on the Indian embassy. A rocket landed near the embassy. It was just before a big summit which was underway in Kabul. And the last time the major event in which Indians were targeted was in 2010 when 6 Indian construction workers and 7 Indian doctors were killed in a terror attack on 2 Kabul guest houses, which were often frequented by Indians. So clearly Indians have been targeted, and of course the intelligence suggests that it's the Pakistanis behind the attacks, because of course Pakistan are not very happy to see Indian presence in Afghanistan. The Pakistani government has its own version of the story, but as of now what has happened right now is the fact that Indian engineers who were working on the plant there have been kidnapped. Remember, India has been trying to reconstruct Afghanistan. It was responsible for the parliament building that was built in Afghanistan, and then of course that major dam, the India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam in the Herat province. The Indian Prime Minister has been to Afghanistan twice. First for the parliament, then of course for the India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam that was earlier known as Salma Dam in Herat province. A lot of infrastructure development projects happening in Afghanistan which have been funded and of course constructed by India. The Kandahar Stadium, that is considered India's gift to the cricket of Afghanistan, has been built by the Indian help. So clearly a lot of infrastructure projects happening, and of course Indian security is something that's always on top of the mind, and this news coming in shortly that the Indians have been kidnapped, and MEA now confirming that Indians have been kidnapped, and of course it is in touch with the Afghan government.
Absolutely. Stay with me both, Siddhant and Amitabh. I'll just come back to you. Also joining us on the broadcast is Vivek Karju, former ambassador to Afghanistan. Appreciate very much, sir, you're speaking with us. Your initial reaction to the big story that's coming in. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs now has officially confirmed that these Indian engineers working in Afghanistan have been kidnapped. All right, we'll just try and reconnect with Vivek Karju. But this is the big story, and these are the details that are coming in of as many as 7 Indian engineers who have been kidnapped in the northern Baghlan province in Afghanistan. What we also know at this point is that the Indian Ministry of External Affairs is working in close tandem with the officials in Kabul, trying to get in further details of what exactly transpired. Remember, these were just local reports that had initially indicated that 7 Indian engineers have been kidnapped. But now there is an official confirmation that's come in from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs as well. Ambassador Karju is back on the phone line with us. Ambassador, your initial reaction to this story that we are tracking, 7 Indian engineers who've been kidnapped in Afghanistan.
I think this is a very serious development, and the government, I'm sure, is trying its best to find further details of what has actually transpired. It's not easy to ascertain these details quickly. I myself, 15 15 years ago had to handle, when I was ambassador in Afghanistan, had to handle an abduction of 2 engineers. And we were fortunate to get them back after 15 days in captivity. So I know that this is a sensitive time. Abductions can take place for a variety of reasons, stretching from political to plain extortion. And let us hope that this is only for extortion, because there are all kinds of terrorist groups. There's the Afghan Taliban and the Daesh, and the Afghan Taliban, we know the connections. But I think the government, and I'm sure all of us, the people, as well as the media's primary objective would be for the safe return of our fellow citizens. And therefore, this is a time for very sober assessments and a sober tone, because nothing should happen that distracts from their safe return.
Indeed. Ambassador, before we let you go, as you were talking about a specific instance where you also directly dealt with an abduction case of those Indians while you were serving as Ambassador of India to Afghanistan. Help our viewers understand the security measures that are put in place given the circumstances, given the sensitivities when Indians are employed in Afghanistan.
The employment can be for a variety of reasons. It can stretch from employment in Indian assistance projects in urban areas, in rural areas, or it can be employment by Indians for private companies for international projects. Now, the security arrangements that are made in such cases is specific to the case itself. But the government and the embassy in Kabul and our consulates in the 4 cities, in Mazar-e-Sharif, in Herat, in Kandahar and Jalalabad, also issue advisories to all Indians for basic security measures and safety measures that they can adopt. So in this case, it would really be a question of inquiry as to what were the security measures employed, because my understanding is that they were working as a part of an Indian company, which in turn was working for some perhaps an internationally assisted project in Afghanistan. Normally, in such situations, security measures are taken. But then, unfortunately, as we all know, that there are no foolproof security measures anywhere in the world. And the security situation in Afghanistan is very dangerous. I think the first thing that we need to do in such cases is to be very, very sober, very correct, keep a cool head, and then let the people who are supposed to deal with these things deal with them. A shrill reaction or response anywhere within the country does not help. And I'm really making this point out of personal experience of such cases.
Sure.
So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best and hope for their safe return. And I'm confident that this government, like previous governments, would leave no stone unturned for their safe return. And that has to be, you will agree with me, that was the primary objective of the country at this stage.
Absolutely. And the Indian Ministry of External Affairs making every effort possible while it works in close cooperation with the officials in Kabul as well. Given the sensitivity of the incident, 7 Indian engineers working in Kabul have been kidnapped in northern Baghlan province there. We're going to leave it there for the moment. Ambassador Kaju and Amitabh Revi and our correspondent Siddhant Sibal joining us. Thank you very much for those details and perspectives. That does remain our continuing focus here on WION.